on. So, Mark, we're on podcast number 3 together.
All right, man. Let's
All
get those
right,
views.
let's get those views. All right, so we're here, Derek Fahey, Mark Terry, my partner, one and only at the Plus IP firm. And let's get started. We planned on doing, talking about, arguments that work with patent office action responses for likelihood of confusion rejections. But let's just see where it goes. All right. So first thing is first, let's do rapid fire questions. I put 10 questions that Chat GPT said may be good questions to ask for a podcast. And number 1, Mark, what's the last thing you Googled besides directions? I do that all the time. Besides directions.
The last thing I Googled was what are the advantages and disadvantages of having an oil catch can?
That's awesome. I honestly, besides the last thing I Googled was how to get to a certain place just today. Before that, it's probably about like a patent or something like that. I Google patents all the time to see what the company owns for patents. All right. Favorite book you've read recently?
Snow Crash.
Wow. What is that book about?
Oh man, Snow Crash is like it's one of those classic sci-fi books that you have to read. It's just it's probably one of the best ones in recent history. I think it's from, I want to say the 80s.
Okay.
And the author, Stevenson, he was actually, believe it or not, he was actually hired as I think it was the artistic director over at, do you remember Magic Leap?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was like the artistic director. They hired the author of Snow Crash, which was which is a bold move at the time. A lot of these companies that are like sort of tech with a creative bent to it, they'll hire some big, like larger than life figure to be like their artistic director.
Yeah. By the way, Magic Leap is in South Florida. I know they're still around, but have you heard anything about Magic Leap at all?
Oh man, you got to read this article. There was a great article. I want to say it was either I want to say it was Wired. They did an amazing sort of like post-mortem on the company.
Is it post-mortem at this point?
Well, they are still around. No, they are still around, and they're actually trying to put out a product and everything. But it's just not what it was. A few years ago, there was over $1 billion in investment.
Yeah.
High hopes. A lot of dreams were pinned on this. And of course, that has now been reduced to some smaller dream. But Wired did an amazing article. I want to say it was Wired. If not, it maybe Ars Technica. And it was just about like everything that went wrong and why everything got screwed up and all the mistakes that were made. Excellent.
I got to check it out, man. Funny enough, like when I remember when everybody was talking about Magic Leap and it was the biggest, they got, some of the biggest, most, large amounts of funding in a long time. And it was going to be the next big project. And then they kept on pushing back the release dates of the project. Yeah. And by the way, people that are watching the podcast, Magic Leap was a augmented reality company that was going to put out some augmented reality product, a virtual reality product. And they kept on pushing back their release dates for quite a long period of time. And I don't even know if they have a product yet, quite honestly. But funny enough, I had a buddy who worked there, whose brother worked there, and he was an engineer there. I always ask him, like, "Hey man, can I come get a tour of the facility? This is a couple of years ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago." And I said, "Hey, can I come and check out the facility?" And he was so secretive. He was like, "No, you can't come. We can't come check it out." I know people that have worked there and they were doing real engineering. But it was always like, oh, it's just not good enough. And I feel like they missed a boat, it's just like they missed a boat on it. I don't know.
Yeah, it could have been huge. And I I feel like it kind of, in some ways, it paralleled what happened with Meta, which is, well, the metaverse concept, which is, and by that I simply mean that, Facebook lost what 75% of its value, and a lot of it was last year due to just this huge investment they made in the metaverse, which just didn't pan out. Now it might pan out, right? Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe next year it'll be like the biggest thing ever, and they're going to be on the front lines of it, or it may not.
Yeah.
That's what makes it interesting.
Yeah. AR, and, it's something so interesting because it's such having an AR product, you have to have some sort of device that you have to wear. It's cumbersome and it's expensive, and you've had like the devices you put on you put in front of your face, and you have to basically put something in front of your face at this point, right? And Elon Musk set up, had something to say about the virtual reality. He's like, it's making you're actually, when you use these kind of products that you're looking into, you're actually, people have been saying for years not to look at TV too close, and now like you're this close to the you're this close to the screen. Is that good? It's hard to buy that it is.
Right.
Anyways, the last book for me that I've read recently is, I'm actually rereading it, is Good to Great by Jim Collins. It's a business book. But anyways, number 3, best vacation.
Good to Great?
Good to Great, yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Yeah, Good to Great, Jim Collins. Number 3, best vacation you've ever taken, or at least the most memorable.
Best one. Ooh, that's a hard one.
That is a hard one. What's the first one that pops into your mind? Maybe
let's just say Thailand.
Oh yeah, mine too. I was actually just talking about a trip to Thailand that I took when I got.
We should go. We should do that.
Oh man, we should do the podcast from Thailand, like in Koh Phi Phi or something like that.
Yeah, or just from like the middle of Bangkok. It kind of has that like futuristic, like Blade Runner look with all the neon lights and everything and the technology.
Yeah,
that'd be super cool.
I was just talking
rock climbing there too.
Yeah, in Krabi, right?
In near Krabi, yeah, Rayleigh.
Yeah, Rayleigh, yeah. Rayleigh Beach, beautiful beach. Yeah, Thailand, was just talking about it today. I would probably say the same thing, man. I took a trip to Thailand. Highly recommend it. All right. Favorite song to sing in the shower. How much singing in the shower do you do, Mark?
Let's just say I'm gonna go with Cypress Hill, Hits from the Bong. What do you got?
I don't know if I can top that. I think we just go to the next question. We just go to the next question. I don't really do much singing from the shower, but if I did, I'd go with, I came in. I'm not worthy, man. Hits from the bong in the shower. That's awesome. All right. Do you prefer coffee or tea?
Oh, coffee, man.
100%.
Coffee all day.
Yeah. I've been trying to limit my coffee intake quite a bit. So I have I have a small coffee cup, so that how like I drink less amounts of coffee. So I have to get up more to go and get more coffee. It kind of works, but half the time I'm looking at this empty coffee cup and I'm like, God, I need more coffee, But I'm a coffee guy.
Sometimes I fear that like 25 years from now, this data is going to come out and they're going to say, whoa, everyone, do you remember all that coffee you were drinking? We all told you it was good for you. No, it's really bad for you.
They go back and forth a lot, man. It's all about moderation, right? I mean, you see people I probably drink on the higher side of coffee, so it's probably not good anyways. But man, coffee is just so delicious, it's just so delicious. I love the tea. I drink it black. Anyways, all right. What's your go-to karaoke song, Mark?
I might go with probably.
You're a big karaoke guy too, man.
Bohemian Rhapsody. That's a good one.
Wow, really?
For karaoke? I mean, everyone knows that, right?
Yeah, man. That is a solid song. It's a tough one. You know this, Mark. I'm a big Johnny Cash guy when I do karaoke. So I'll do
Nice.
Ring of Fire, Johnny Cash, or I will do the legend, Gone Too Soon, Tom Petty, Free Falling.
Tom Petty. All right.
Okay, and we've done
I say Michael
karaoke.
Jackson. Okay.
No. We've you and I, myself, your wife Celine, my wife Ann, and I have closed down a karaoke bar more than once. Okay, so
Yeah.
for everybody out there, all right. So if you could have one superpower, what would it be? I think I know this answer for you already.
How about immortality?
Wow, man, vampire style, like it. Okay, I would probably say mind reading, although I want to be able to turn off my ability to mind read as well, or predict the future. Okay,
Oh,
favorite.
that's even better actually than being immortal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
predict the
Okay.
future, right?
Yeah.
Favorite TV show of all time. That's a tough one.
Oh man, that's a hard one, but I would say probably Game of Thrones.
Oh, I'm up there too, man. Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Big fan of Game of Thrones. Maybe even Sopranos. Um, okay,
Yes.
what's the most definitely an HBO situation here.
Yeah.
What's the most interesting thing you've learned recently?
Oh, here's a good one. Here's okay. So I was reading about I'm reading about math history
Okay.
and about how we as humans we're just really not wired or cut out for learning or understanding statistics and probability. And I was shocked to learn the first. So we've been doing math for thousands of years, right? Like if you think of something like the Pythagorean theorem, it goes back to like I want to say 2000 BC, something like that, right? The first time anyone ever took an average, a mean, it's like 1600.
Wow.
We just learned how to take averages like just a couple hundred years ago.
That's so crazy.
I mean, we were doing like, really complicated trigonometry before that, and no one ever thought to take an average.
Can you imagine like, you know, I want to know the facts about that because, man, like I think in business and merchants, like merchants, maybe like, in the, back in the, the Greeks and the Romans, those guys are shrewd, man. Those guys are, you really don't think they're taking an average to say, hey, we take, this many boatloads of sheep over here. What's the average? You don't think they're doing some sort of maybe not defining the actual equation
Yeah.
per se, but they must have. They're doing averages in their brain, right? I mean, or in their mind. Right?
It's possible, right? I mean, in the early 1600s is when it was first recorded, and it became part of math canon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible that some merchants were doing it, and it just never made it into the math books. Yeah, that's possible.
Yeah,
I mean, just the fact that it didn't even make it in the math books until 1600s is amazing.
Not even like in China or like in Islamics, because
No.
the Muslims and the people in the Mid East, they invented mathematics, or like one of the first.
You would think so, but no, that's a fairly recent development. I was really amazed to learn that.
Wow, that is actually pretty incredible, man.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's a great topic. Okay, let's see what else we got here. If you could switch lives with anyone for a day, who would it be?
Oh, I would say maybe the president.
The president? Yeah. I was thinking more like a rock star, just like one day, just like
Yes.
some amazing lifestyle. We want to see how did this guy live? Like, just one day. I don't think I probably die after that one day, but just let me have one day of this guy's lifestyle. Maybe it's like, I don't know, just to see how that person lives,
Who would that be today? Who would that even be?
Maybe Elon Musk, to see like what kind of stuff he's working on.
I see. Okay.
The stuff that he's working on is really I think he's working on some really cool things, both in in machine learning and artificial intelligence, and also he's the richest guy in the world. I mean, or
Yeah.
first or second,
Rocket
depending on,
engines.
yeah. I mean, the guy's
Yeah.
literally going to space, right? Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So today's topic was going to be about, things that we use for trademarks, or the best arguments that we use to get around likelihood of confusion or rejections. But before I got on the call, I was telling you that I was approached by a law firm wanting to potentially like have us merge with their law firm. And you kind of want to talk about this a little bit, just kind of like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, how many I've had it happen once or twice, but have you had it a lot? And what's your experience been on
I used to get those offers a lot when I was younger. I don't know, maybe I'm too old now and I don't get those offers anymore. Maybe they're like, forget it, this guy. But anyhow, I used to get those a lot, and I actually used to sit down with them to actually, find out, okay, what is their motivation here? What are they looking for? And it seemed pretty cut and dry, pretty simple what they were looking for. They were looking for someone to share in the expenses. So, take for example, you get small law firm, you got 4 partners, right? And so every year their cost is $1 million. So every one of them has to pay $250,000 every year in costs. That's payroll, rent, and everything else. Well, in order to increase their take-home pay, right, their nets, they've got to either cut costs, which would be like firing people and getting smaller office space. But that you can only do that so much. At some point, you just become really lean. And then the other way to increase it would be to just go out and get more work, which is great. But of course, if you get too much work, then you've got to increase your workforce, right? And there's a cost associated with that. So sometimes getting more work is accompanied by more costs, and they kind of even each other out. But there's another way to do it that doesn't cost you anything and only results in a reduction in cost, which is getting more partners. So if you bring in another partner who has a good book of business, well, he's got a book of business, so it's not like you need to bring in any and he's doing work, or he might have an associate as well. But right, you don't need to bring any additional business to take care of this additional partner, and he pays his part of the costs. So if you have 4 partners that are paying $250,000 each, you add a 5th partner, and then all of a sudden each partner is only paying $200K.
Yeah.
You're thinking, wow, that's $50K I just made next year without having to pay a cent.
Yep.
And that seemed to be their motivation. And also, whenever I would ask any of them, well, what are you getting out of it? I would get the same answer every single time, which is this ambiguous answer where they say, well, we would be giving you a platform, right? We would be giving you this platform for you to go out and get more work and service your clients. And I never really got what that meant, a platform.
Yeah. Well, one, I've had it a couple times, and I really never really looked into it or paid attention to it. One, it's really flattering, for me anyways, like to have someone say, hey, maybe we can explore this opportunity. We like your website. We think you have great clients. We see your work. Obviously that's flattering to me as an attorney to say someone admiring your work. I mean, who would not be flattered for that? And then I've never really explored it too deeply. I just know that how I like kind of, I like having my autonomy, and I like working for myself, and I like having my team. And, the meshing of cultures, that's got to be a huge, it's got to make sure, you have to make sure that's the right fit. Who can you bring? Who can you not bring? It just seems like a massive undertaking. If it doesn't go through, it's just this huge loss of time, and I don't know, something that came up recently, and yeah, I just thought it was interesting. One of my accounting buddies always says to me, there's always a number that you should entertain, right? So Yeah, that happened to me actually today. So it's always kind of fun to hear you do good work. People see you and
Yeah.
recognize your capabilities. That's kind of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always open to listen to hear people out.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
it'll
For
be
sure.
interesting to see how that plays out.
Sure. All right. Well, let's get started here, man. So, okay. So, trademark office actions, likelihood of confusion rejections. By way of background, typically how this works in trademark world, as you know, Mark, you file a trademark application, it gets waits several months, then it's examined by an examining attorney to see if it meets certain legal requirements. And one of the legal requirements is that it cannot be or cannot cause a likelihood of confusion with any other prior pending application of registered marks. And if it is going to create a confusion, or they believe it could create likelihood of confusion, they'll issue a rejection, and you have a chance to respond. So just off the first thing, what's the first thing that you think examiners really like? What arguments have you used in the past that have worked well?
I would say, yeah, I would say, well, probably where I spend most of my time, or the focus of my responses when it's available, would be differences in the actual text of the trademarks. I think that's where you always want to start. If it's available, sometimes that's not an argument that's available to you because the marks are identical, right?
Yep.
But if it's available to you, that's a big one. What does that change result in? Maybe it's a huge visual difference. Maybe it results in a huge audio difference, when you pronounce the words. Maybe it's a huge difference in meaning, or maybe it's just a difference in connotation. Whatever it might be, you have to detect what that change is going to be, and then you got to make a lot of hay out of it. A lot of hay.
Yeah, yeah, exactly right. And as you know, with the DuPont test, the DuPont factor test, right, that they use for likelihood of confusion, that's actually the point you just made out was actually one of the two most important factors, right? The type of the actual mark itself. So that's a great point. For me, the second one I would make, if it's available, is are the goods and services difference, right? That's the second biggest factor you would pay attention to. It. One of the things we like to do, and in fact, we do that. I know you do this as well, Mark. Is trying to focus on look at the specimens that were filed with the application or the cited mark. Look at what you're using the mark for to try to differentiate your goods and services with the cited registration or cited pending applications, goods and services, and try to find reasons why these goods are very different if it's available. So if it's the same mark, you could still make some arguments and use evidence, which I think is very important, to explain to the examining attorney, hey, this mark is doing this. That's really different than what we're doing. We're not going to be, advertising and our consumers are different. That's the second thing we focus on, is using evidence to support how the goods and services are different.
Yeah. And on that note, one item I like to bring up to support that idea is the idea that you, again, if it's available to you, is the idea that your client's product is never going to be on a shelf next to the cited marks product, because one is, an item you would find in a grocery store. Another one might be something you would find in a specialty plumber supply store, for example.
Yeah.
Whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
I like to bring that up if it's available. Sometimes they are both items that would be sold in a grocery store, in which case it's not available. But if it's not, I like to bring that up as well.
Yeah. And to that point, another thing I like to bring up to examining attorneys is, if it's available, is how costly are these purchases. So for example, if it's a senior care facility, right, the amount of time and effort that a consumer would spend on a consumer, a nursing home is a lot different. They would maybe spend when when you are, having a lawn service or something like that, right? So,
Yes.
how much time and energy consumers are going to be paying attention? Is it a quick purchase? Because if it's a quick purchase, the consumers are going to maybe not pay attention to the marks, right? Whereas if it's an expensive or costly purchase, they're going to pay attention to it, and they're more likely to realize, hey, is this lawn company the same as this, this nursing home facility? They're going to know if it's the same company or not,
Yeah. That reminds me, that argument there reminds me of one of the main arguments that were brought up in the FIU versus FNU case.
Yeah.
Where Florida International University sued Florida National University.
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah.
And for trademark infringement. And one of the big topics that were brought up were, hey, college is super expensive. I mean, $15,000, $30,000 a year over 4 years. I mean, you're looking at $60,000 to $120,000. People really, really are very discerning and sophisticated when it comes to picking a school. They will notice a small item like a difference of one letter.
Yeah.
Of course, FIU lost badly, and it was FIU ended up having to pay FNU, or there was I believe it was a settlement they reached for over $1 million in attorney's fees they had to pay FNU.
Yeah, and the attorney is on the hook for that.
I think that, right, that would be between FNU and their attorneys. I mean, if I was FNU, I'd say, hey, what the hell, you guys need to pay some of this, right?
Yeah.
Speaking and that case went on for like 7 or 8 years is my recollection.
Yeah. Yeah. On that note, that's actually a great point. So another argument that we raised, if the marks are very close, we raise the fact that the words, the part of the mark, the dominant portion of the mark is entitled to narrow protection because it's so widely used, with a lot of different registered marks, and it's so widely used. That's a great argument. And I find that examining attorneys are very responsive to that. And what that looks like is, let's say the mark is the word best, right? Best roofing. Okay. I'm just picking a random name, best roofing, best, best hotel. The word best is, widely used by a lot of different registered marks. So that particular word is entitled to narrow protection. So you can have different plays on that word and still coexist peacefully because it's widely used.
Of course.
And, yeah, that's another great argument that we use.
Yeah.
In fact, I spoke with an examining attorney one time on a case, and there's kind of like an unwritten rule, or apparently at the trademark trial, the USPTO, United States Patent Trademark Office, where if you have 3 of the same marks in this, it's the 3 marks that use the same dominant portion in the same space, that's kind of like the minimum that they need. So if you have 30 that are all using the same word in the same, same good or service or same class, obviously that's great, but they need at least 3. And I've actually had examining attorneys talk to them and actually tell them, them tell me, hey, wait till this mark registers. There'll be 3 on the registrar or registered, and then you can make those arguments and I'd probably allow it. So
nice.
Yeah, that's kind of like an unwritten rule that's out there right now.
Yeah. That's actually, that argument is what I'm planning to make this week in a case. I'm currently representing a defendant in an opposition proceeding at the Trademark Trial and Appeal Board. And just to give you a brief background, the plaintiff is a restaurant that has the word hook in it. And I represent the defendant, also a restaurant with the word hook in it. My client's trademark was allowed by the trademark office and it was opposed by the plaintiff. Well, if you take a look at the trademark, the principal register, I found, I want to say it was about 70 existing trademark registrations for restaurants
Wow.
that have the word hook in it.
Oh man, there's so many restaurants for hook in it.
I mean, I just find, and of course that was never mentioned in the plaintiff's brief.
Right.
Not even a passing reference to that. So that is going to end up being probably our most important argument in this case.
Yeah, for sure. I actually just made a very similar argument as to why a plaintiff couldn't enforce a trademark against our client. Now, in that particular case, it was so widely used. I would think it's generic or just not entitled to protection as well. But definitely, if clients are looking to enforce their trademarks, they need to think about how widely used it is and you can enforce it. So that's what we always recommend. I know you do as well with all your clients, Mark, is always recommend a search to talk about the strengths and weaknesses, which is, before we actually file our trademark application or decide to brand a product a certain way, you want to do a search, get a report to see what the strengths and weaknesses are of the particular brand. And that's kind of why we do that, right, Mark?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. What other arguments do you use?
Those would be the big ones. On occasion, if it's available, I like to bring up the idea as to what is the dominant portion of the mark. So if I've got a situation where my mark looks very similar to someone else's mark. However, if I can boil mine down to a dominant portion and I can boil that other mark down to the dominant portion and the dominant portions are not the same, that helps.
Yeah.
Right? Because then I could say, hey, ignore everything else. Let's concentrate on the dominant portions, which are different.
Yeah.
And now I make a lot of hay out of that difference.
Yeah. That's a great point. Another thing that I would like to, is if someone's watching this, that's another attorney or a younger trademark attorney, or even just a trademark attorney that's inexperienced, is really focusing on evidence. You got to include evidence. You got to have some sort of evidence so the examining attorney can really hang his or her hat on this particular evidence that you provide, or at the very least, they now have to go and get evidence to basically support the opposite position, right? And they have the burden now to basically provide something. So, whenever I file responses, we try to put as much evidence in there, whether it's to support that's widely used, getting internet evidence or registrations that's showing
dictionary
evidence. Yeah. Dictionary evidence. That's a big.
I've got my famous Oxford English Dictionary in the office. Do you remember that?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I just use the online version. They're citing it against us, right? So.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. But the OED is given a higher. It's
higher weight.
Yeah, it's given more weight than say like the Cambridge Online Dictionary, which by the way is not associated with Cambridge University. It's just one of those free dictionaries online with all this advertising on it. It's just not given the same weight as the OED. The problem is the OED is so expensive. Yeah. To get access to the online version, it's like $300 a year.
Yeah. I mean, if you're not using it a lot, it doesn't make sense,
Yeah, which is why I bought a physical one, which is funny because if you look at the evidence I submit, it's like photographs. It's like photographs of like a printed dictionary.
that you upload and then send to them,
Yeah. I'm like, here's the definition of this word. Well, check. Here's the actual definition from the OED. And guess what? It doesn't match the definition you gave me.
Yeah.
And it always trumps the evidence they give because the USPTO, believe it or not, does not have access to the OED. You believe that?
Yeah, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's it's a little trick I've been using for years.
Yeah. I always, whether it's myself or our associates, we want to make sure, I tell them to focus on, you got to have evidence. We can argue till we're blue in the face, but if you have some sort of evidence that shows this is what consumers are going to think about when they're actually reading this mark, I actually love including that. So, and a lot of times you're right, Mark, that's dictionary evidence. What does the word, superhero mean versus what is the difference between, or what's the difference between guy and dude, right? So the word guy and dude, they're totally different meanings, right? You have they could be the same,
right?
But they also have a lot of different commercial expressions, which is meant, how do you prove that? You provide dictionary evidence, to your point. So
exactly.
What about have you ever called an examining attorney to kind of talk through a few things before you file a response?
Yeah, all the time. All the time. Yeah. I haven't had the same success with trademark examining attorneys as patent examiners, just because I guess those phone calls you have with the trademark examining attorneys are not as formal as a patent examiner interview, where you have like a set form to request the interview, and then you have an agenda that's submitted, and it's like much more formal. But I always give it a shot.
Yeah, me too. In fact, a lot of times they will actually, I had this case recently where I called and spoke with an examining attorney and tried to talk about some potential amendments to the goods and services of my client's mark, try to circumvent the rejection, to hear, just kind of to gauge a temperature almost, to see how they're going to respond to the arguments. Sometimes they're like, oh, absolutely not. You got to follow a response, and you can kind of tell where it's going to go. But some of them actually, for closer cases, they actually will take it to their weekly meetings where they kind of bounce around ideas and ask questions amongst each other, and they'll kind of say, they'll tell you, hey, half people thought this way, half people thought this way. And in those cases, I find that if you provide a really good response, you have to come back with a very good response in order for them to basically go back to that group of people again to say, here are the reasons why you should decide in our favor, as opposed to, you really have to kind of beef up the response and provide the evidence to convince those people, besides a patent examiner, that he or she will go to. So
yeah.
But yeah, that's it. You got any other closing comments, Mark, on this topic?
I think that's it. I think those are all of the arguments I typically use. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for listening. You can find us at www.plusfirm.com. Mark, what is your Instagram handle?
Mark Terry, PA.
Man, you were just like me. Mine is Derek Fahey, PA. That's my Instagram handle. Same for TikTok. You can find us on YouTube because you're watching this video. Have a great day. Talk to you guys soon. See ya.